But they were in for a diabolical surprise. More on that in a bit. Waylon Jennings was born on June 15, 1937, to farm laborers Lorraine and William Jennings, who lived and worked on a cotton farm near Littlefield, Texas. Even though his family was dirt poor with the floors to match, Jennings' mother bought him a used guitar when he was 8 and taught him to play 30 pieces of silver. He was good enough to perform at local events and even won a TV talent show. By 14, he already had a weekly 30-minute radio show. Waylon Jennings realized that he was holding the key to escaping Littlefield right in his hands. It didn't matter that he could never afford music lessons or that he'd been expelled from music class for lack of musical talent. His guitar was his way out, and he played it as if his life depended on it. Jennings's talent was starting to turn heads. He'd landed regular gigs on a country radio station and even scored a job as a DJ in Lubbock, Texas. Jennings had grown up fast. Not only was he out of Littlefield, but he had also tied the knot at just 18 years old to Maxine Carroll Lawrence. In his line of work, Waylon Jennings constantly rubbed shoulders with musicians, but one in particular spotted his raw talent. None other than a bespectacled up-and-comer named Buddy Holly. Holly told Jennings, "The way you sing, there's no limit." Buddy Holly booked Jennings a recording session and even invited him on his next tour. As Jennings put it, "I couldn't have been more surprised when Buddy walked into the station one day, pitched me an electric bass guitar, and said, 'You have 2 weeks to learn to play that thing.'" Sure, young Jennings was green as a gourd, but Holly had an eye for talent. Before long, Jennings joined Holly's band on the Winter Dance Party tour, along with several other buzzy new acts. As their unheated bus crossed the freezing upper Midwest, Jennings had to face up to the fact that it wasn't quite the glamorous gig he'd been dreaming of. As if things weren't rough enough, the tour schedule was brutal. 25 shows with 0 nights off, with hundreds of miles between venues, in an unheated bus on snowy pre-interstate rural roads. Things were pretty miserable. And then it would break down, stranding Jennings and his fellow musicians in the bitter cold. It was so bad that some of the performers even got frostbite and the flu. It was only a matter of time before something had to give. Can you imagine Taylor Swift shivering away with a fever on her tour bus, hand-washing her clothes in a motel sink, and praying they dry before showtime? But that's exactly how desperate things got for Holly and his crew. In the era long before private jets, Buddy Holly made a bold move and chartered a tiny plane for himself, his guitarist, and Jennings. When word got out about the plane, Waylon Jennings was suddenly approached by the Big Bopper. Desperate for warmth, the flu-addled singer asked for Jennings' seat on the aircraft. Jennings said, "If it's okay with Buddy, it's okay with me." Meanwhile, across the room, Buddy's other band member lost a coin toss, and Richie Waylon's landed a seat on the plane. The next morning, the tour bus pulled into Moorhead, and as the musicians thawed out, their tour manager went into their hotel, but then came rushing back out. He asked to talk to Jennings, and one look at the manager's face told Jennings something was very wrong. Holly's guitarist went inside, and moments later he returned with the devastating news. After losing his friend and mentor Buddy Holly, not to mention his other tour mates, Waylon Jennings didn't feel like playing another note. But the agency forced everyone to finish the tour, threatening that they wouldn't pay them. Afterwards, a devastated Jennings went back to his radio station job, but the spark that made him the wild man DJ was gone. He couldn't fake it anymore. As he put it, "I was empty, drained of hope." Waylon Jennings was struggling to support his ever-growing family, and things only got harder when his father-in-law fell seriously ill. The family packed up and moved to Arizona to be closer to him, while Waylon bounced around between radio stations, hoping something would stick. Yet again, music came to Jennings' rescue. Then, of all the juke joints in all the towns, Jennings had to walk into Lynn's. She was a sassy and spirited older woman who hired him to play at her club, and things heated up fast. Waylon Jennings might have thought his encounter with Lynn was yet another one-night stand on tour, but he was so wrong. While Jennings was having his fun, Maxine, now pregnant with the couple's fourth child, decided to move from Arizona to Texas. Disaster ensued when Maxine somehow got the phone number to Lynn's apartment. When Lynn answered the phone, well, let's just say the jig was up. Waylon Jennings didn't let this part of his life slow his music career down one bit. By the mid-60s, he had divorced Maxine, married Lynn, moved to Nashville, and dropped his debut album, Folk Country, marking the start of a wildly productive period. But how did he manage to become so productive? When Jennings arrived in Nashville, he ended up sharing a one-bedroom apartment with none other than Johnny Cash, who just so happened to be popping amphetamines like candy. Jennings joined in and later bragged, "I prided myself on the fact that I could take more pills, stay up longer, sing more songs, and screw more women than most anybody you ever met." After 5 years of married life, Jennings's relationship with Lynn was crumbling, and it was all his fault. He'd already started secretly seeing Barbara, a tall, blonde millionaire's daughter, while waiting for the divorce. He even moved her into an apartment just down the hall from where he and Johnny Cash lived. When the pair finally married, Barbara's father offered Jennings anything to keep her happy. But marriage number 3 was also doomed. Life on the road for Waylon Jennings was a crazy blur of music, pills, and women. One unforgettable night in Louisville, Jennings was in a lusty frenzy. He hadn't slept for days, but that didn't stop him from running up and down the emergency staircase of a hotel where he had women stashed on 3 different floors. As much as Waylon Jennings loved the never-ending bevy of beauties, his body and mind were starting to pay the price for his wild days. At just 138 pounds, he admitted he was bent on self-destruction. But along came Jessie Coulter, the best thing that ever happened to him. Waylon Jennings and Jessie Coulter quickly became country music's hottest couple, even snagging a Grammy nomination in 1970 for their duet, Suspicious Minds. For the first time, Jennings had a wife who understood his passion for music and didn't feel threatened by it. Waylon Jennings was nothing if not dedicated to the music. Unfortunately, his hard-living ways on the road eventually caught up with him. He contracted hepatitis, landing him in the hospital with way too much time to think. He realized that after a decade on the honky-tonk circuit, he was sick, deeply in debt, and the IRS was after him. Jennings left the hospital on a mission. His drummer's idea was simple, a rock and roll attitude, and Jennings was all in. As much as he loved country, he didn't care for the rhinestone suits, pushing Nashville producers who wanted to smooth out his rough edges and labels that gave him no respect or royalties. Thanks to his manager's fine-angling, Waylon Jennings scored more money and creative control than ever before. And it paid off. In June of 1974, he released This Time, which became his first #1 hit. Jennings was now a bona fide superstar with an iconic look to match. Huge sunglasses, bushy beard, and a wide-brimmed black hat. Jennings' drummer Richie had a plan to get him off amphetamines by introducing him to coke. As Robin Williams once joked, it's God's way of saying you're making too much money, and for Jennings, this was spot on. Especially after Wanted, the Outlaws dropped. The album, featuring Jennings, Jessie, Willie Nelson, and Temple Glacier, became the first country album to sell over 1 million copies. Waylon Jennings was way too fond of the nose candy, to the point where his habit was costing him $1,500 a day. He knew he was an addict, and so did everyone around him, including the authorities. In 1977, during one of Jennings' recording sessions, he received a package from his manager. Waylon Jennings set the package down and got back to recording until he heard something odd in his headphones. The sound engineer was secretly holding down the talkback button, Letting Jennings hear the newly arrived DEA agents, a true outlaw, wouldn't lose their cool in this tense situation. And Jennings aced the assignment. Sitting in a soundproof booth, he knew the DEA agents had no idea he could hear them. So, like a pro, he continued with the recording session. Extra loud for good measure, the DEA had been so sure of their plan that they made a rookie mistake. They put the wrong address on the search warrant. They couldn't search the recording studio because the address on the warrant was for Jennings' office, and Jennings' secretary had brought the package over from there. As they stood there, waiting helplessly for an updated warrant, they heard a toilet flush, and they knew that their case had literally gone down the drain. Waylon Jennings was at the heart of a media-feeding frenzy, but after days of searching, the DEA still hadn't found anything in his possession. The court case dragged on for months and cost Jennings $100,000, but in the end, the charges were dropped. Waylon got a ton of free publicity, and he wrote a hit song about it called "Don't You Think This Outlaw Bit's Done Got Out of Hand." In 1979, Waylon Jennings put his deep Southern twang and DJ skills to good use as the narrator of the hit show, The Dukes of Hazzard. He called it a moonshine excuse for car chases and watching Catherine box behind in cut-off jeans. The producers loved his voice so much that they asked him to create the theme song, which became the biggest hit of his career. Watching her husband spiral into the abyss was heartbreaking, but Jessie Coulter knew she couldn't force Waylon Jennings to kick his habit. Worse still, his music was slipping. He was hearing things that weren't there and losing his creative instincts. Only when their son was endangered did Waylon Jennings finally get clean. The 1985 "We Are the World" incident makes us wonder if maybe newly sober Waylon Jennings was feeling a bit ornery. More than 45 of the best-known musicians at the time had gathered together to record a charity song for Africa. When Stevie Wonder suggested they sing part of the song in Swahili, Jennings was not having it. "No good old boy sings in Swahili," Jennings huffed before storming out of the session. Swahili didn't make it into the song, but somehow Jennings' name made it into the credits. Whether he actually returned to the studio is up for debate, but one thing's certain, the song was a smash and went on to raise over $80 million. Waylon Jennings was now on the straight and narrow, but he was clearly trying to fill some sort of existential hole. For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factornate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details. He now smoked a whopping 7 packs of cigarettes a day, and he gorged on outrageous amounts of food. After narrowly escaping a heart attack, Waylon Jennings ended up needing quadruple bypass surgery. When he woke up, he was stunned to see his old friend Johnny Cash. Though Cash wasn't exactly a picture of health either, they got a doctor to check Johnny out and immediately ordered his emergency bypass surgery. During their recovery, Jennings and Cash found humor in the situation. The human body can only take so much. On top of his heart trouble, Waylon Jennings was hit with more bad news: type 2 diabetes. By 2000, the pain in his leg was so bad that he had to stop touring, and by the next year, things got worse. He had to have his foot amputated. In 2001, he earned a spot in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Sadly, he couldn't attend the ceremony because he was in too much pain from his diabetes. Just a few months later, he passed in his sleep from complications from the disease. Way back when Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper went down in a plane crash, Waylon Jennings was left reeling, knowing that not only had he given up his seat to the Big Bopper, but that some of the final moments with Holly had ended with a terrible joke. Just the day before, Holly had been ribbing him about being afraid to fly, but Jennings insisted that that wasn't the reason why he wasn't getting on the plane. Holly, grinning, had said, "I hope your damn bus freezes up again." Jennings had choked back, "Well, I hope your plane crashes. Jennings, a superstitious Southern boy of just 21, thought he had 100% caused the crash that took his friend, bandmate, and mentor. It was a heavy cross to bear. Reflecting on his legacy, Waylon Jennings once said, "You never do know where the stones you throw will land." He illustrated this by describing how he was once at an awards ceremony when someone behind him said, "Mr. Jennings, you're like a god to me." Jennings turned to see Billy Ray Cyrus, and all he could think was, "If I'm your god, what does your devil look like?" If you enjoyed this Fact in 8 video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.